Hi. So, if anyone is interested, I did post the picture, link to the picture in the live chat. Now, this is just a stock photo of a landscape, and that's what we're going to be kind of working off of right now. So, feel free to open that if that helps. Otherwise, there is a previous video that is similar, but it is not live. This way, you guys can ask me questions as we're going here. But so let's get started. As some of you probably know, when we're working in the classroom, I always want you to sketch before you start painting. There's a lot of reasons for that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be very hyper detailed sketching. I just want you to get in the habit of outlining the rough area that you're wanting to be working with. That way you know where you're putting certain colors, and it's a little bit easier to keep everything separated. So I'm going to do that. Now, the horizon line is the horizontal line, so it goes across your page, not up and down, but side to side. The horizon line on this image is about halfway through and then a little bit lower down. So we're just going to do kind of a straight line across right there. And I am completely incapable of making a straight line, so I usually just go back and forth a little bit, and then it's roughly straight. And I'm not sure how well you guys can see that, so I'll darken it a little bit here. And then the mountainscapes, we've got one that's kind of going this way, and we've got one that is coming up this way. And then in the back, we've got one and two right here. And then we've got another one that's coming down kind of like that. I'm actually going to put a little more light on this. So I'm not sure if you guys can see it. So hang on just a sec. All right. I don't know if that helps or not. It'll help more if it's not catching all of the light here. All right. There. I think that helps some. All right. And I'm going to tilt this down a little bit more so you can see the image more. All right, so that's, and then you just need to do the reflection down at the bottom of the mountains. And the reflection does not need to be exactly the same. The water will warp the reflection somewhat. So if it's not an exact replica of what you see on top, that's fine, but you want it to be approximately the same. But don't waste too much time being nitpicky about it. You will be fine. All right. So then let's get painting here. Now don't forget, if you do want a copy of the image, there is a link posted on the chat if you want to see the image of what we are painting. And if you start to fall behind, that's totally fine. You can tell me to slow down. Otherwise, you can also, we will be posting this video, and we also have a different recorded video of this painting as well, so that if you guys need more time, feel free to take it. Everybody works at a different pace. So I am going to take some of my blue here, and I'm just using watercolors. I'm going to take some of my blue, and I'm going to put it at the very, very top of the painting, and I'm going to go straight across like this, because the top of the sky is going to be darker than everything else. So I'm going to put all the color up on top here, and then I'm going to pull it down so that it fades as it goes down, because then you'll get the look of that sky. So I'm going to grab some water. I'm not rinsing my brush off completely, just grabbing some. And then I'm just going to start pulling this down. And with watercolors, you can kind of just keep moving it around and reusing it. And you probably won't need any more paint than what we put up on top already. Not for the sky. Because the sky's only going to be darker on the top there. It fades into almost white as it gets down here. I just keep grabbing water and going up to the top where that darker color is and pulling it down. And less is more when it comes to the color. You can always add in more color, but it's a lot harder to take it away. So then I'm just continuing pulling it down here. If it doesn't feel like it's moving, just grab more water and add it. This is why you generally want to use thicker paper when you're using watercolors, because you're going to keep moving it around. And you will see that there are some spots where you kind of start to get little balls of paper that are being pulled up, and that's fine. We'll get rid of that later. All right. And I definitely had more than enough color on there. And I'm going to do the same thing down at the bottom in the water here. Grab some color and just go across the reflection of that skyline. Just pull it up. All right. For the most part, when you're painting, you want to start as far back as possible and work your way forward, especially when you're using things like acrylic paints, where they layer in such a way that when they dry, you can't really play around too much. When it comes to watercolors, a lot of the time you want to try and stick with working with your lighter colors and then working to dark. I do a little bit of both. And I'm gonna start with this back mountain here next, and I'm grabbing what's called yellow ochre, which is kind of a yellowish brown color here. And if you do not have that color, just take a little dab of brown and mix it in with your yellow, and you'll get something similar. Doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so I can only sort of see my picture on my laptop because I moved it down a little bit. So here, open up a little more again. All right, so in this back mountain, I'm gonna put some of that yellow down. And then this one here has some of that yellow ochre along the middle. Now this mountain, the yellow shows in the middle, but it doesn't go all the way to the top, whereas this one, it'll spread. So now I'm just going to spread it out because you don't want it to be super dark. The further in the distance things are, the less detailed they're going to look and the less sharp the colors are going to be. So you don't want to use super dark colors back here. So just move that yellow around. Just like that. I'll grab a little bit more, but not a lot because it's going to be even more faded in the water here. And kind of mix that in. That was a lot. And again, you're just doing exactly what you see up here, but down here. So a reflection is going to look like if you folded the paper in half, this line would be reflected right here. So you want to think of it as being folded on this horizon line. Then I'm going to grab some brown and start kind of working on the top of this mountain here. I'm going to add kind of a brown line, just outline the top of the far back mountain. Wet down your brush and just dab along that line and kind of bring it down. Because then you still have that dark line up there, but it'll kind of lighten it up and make it look like that shadow is being cast over more than just that top outline. And this one, we're going to take some green, and I'm actually going to mix my green and my brown a little bit. Oh, almost dipped my paintbrush into my coffee. You don't want to do that. It doesn't taste good. Mix my green into my brown so I can get a kind of a dark forest green because I've got a pretty bright green here. Oh, that was maybe a touch too much brown. We're going to put the greenery that's on the top of this mountain here. And if your colors start to bleed, and what that means is that there's a lot of water, so if you have spots where when you put down the color, it kind of spreads out like that, grabs the water and just kind of explodes onto your paper, that means that the paint is bleeding, and that is totally fine because we can work with that. Sometimes it actually adds a really cool effect. So we're just going to keep dabbing. So now the plant life that's on this mountain is kind of going down the mountain. So as I'm dabbing these lines, I'm going to do it in that direction so that it looks like those trees and bushes and such spreading down. I don't know if it works to have my light on that side, considering I'm casting quite the shadow here with my hand. That might work better. All right, I'm going to grab some more green and brown and put it at the bottom here, going up, so I can make sure it goes all the way down to this horizon line. All right, and I am going to put some on this back mountain too, because there is some that's kind of right here, kind of going up. And I am going to grab some more brown, and I'm kind of brushing it against my palette here to try and get some of the moisture off, because I want some color, but I want it to be on a fairly dry brush so that I can kind of do a similar thing on this back mountain, but without it having too much water on there. But I'm doing that with mostly the brown rather than the brown and green. All right, and then down here, I'm gonna kind of do something similar, but for right now, I'm just gonna do a thicker brown outline here. Might help if I shield the light just a bit so you can actually see this line right here. And I'm gonna grab my brown and green mixture again. And if you have to keep remixing it, that's fine. It doesn't need to stay the same color. You can always change a little bit, and the reflection of the mountain actually looks darker than the mountain itself, so that's totally fine if it changes color. So I'm gonna follow this up here. And then just keep dabbing it and spreading it down. Just like so. Grab some more water so I can spread it some more. Now, when we did the mountains up here, not the reflections, but the actual mountains, we wanted to make sure that they were brought all the way down to this horizon line. But if you take a look at the picture, we don't want to do that in the reflection because the water is catching more light along here, so it's going to be mostly white in that spot. So we're going to bring it to just about a finger's width away from that horizon line. So now we're going to jump to these two big mountains here, which we are going to start with some pretty brightish green. So I'm just going to grab my regular green, and I am going to paint a base coat on here just so that it's already mostly green. Because then all the colors we put over it, we won't have little chunks of white showing through. Just like that. Do Same thing down here. Now on the other side, this is more of yellow green, so I'm going to take that yellow ochre, which remember, if you don't have that, just mix brown and yellow to get kind of a dull, kind of burnt yellow color, and then mix a little bit of that into the green. And we're going to go over this. Yeah, you don't want to be afraid to mix bits of your colors, but you want to make sure that you're not mixing the whole thing. So like you can see on my yellow here that I've been mixing some colors in it, but I don't mix over the whole thing, because then if you want to get to actual yellow, you don't want to have to scrape away half of your paint to get to it. So just make sure you're controlling how much you're mixing, and then you will be fine. So now I'm going to grab the yellow ochre again, and I'm going to go over the ridge of this mountain up on here. And then I'm going to do some of those lines that go kind of down the slope of the mountain again. I'm going to block some of that light. There we go. That helps. Maybe not. Do it like this for now. Less is more for now. And we're going to follow the slope of this mountain with that yellow here. Going over the green, and just keep dabbing. You're not going to see an awful lot of smooth when you're looking at mountain landscapes and stuff like that. This is all greenery, leaves, so it's going to be easier to get that across by dabbing at it. We're going to do similar down here. Just like so. And remember, the chat is available if you guys have any questions, or if you need me to do something again or re-explain something, feel free to let me know. All right, so now I'm actually going to grab some black, and I'm going to go along the outside edges of these mountains here, because they're very dark over there. Just keep dabbing. Spreading it out. Now with black, just remember that a little bit goes a long way. So you don't want to put a ton on there because it can very easily take over your entire painting. Just grab some water if you need to spread it out. Well, this bottom mountain is a lot darker than the top one, so I'm going to spread this black out quite a bit more. All right, now when my brush is pretty much dry, I'm actually just going over the rest of the mountain just to add some dark undertones here. But you don't want to do that when your brush is wet, because otherwise then you'll just have giant blotches of dark on there. But if you do it when it's dry, you're just spreading little bits of that color. It'll add more depth to your mountain. Now the shadow of this one down here is actually like almost completely black in the photo itself. So we're going to use quite a bit on this one. Remember, you can always add more, you can't always take it away. So start with a little and add to it. We'll just follow the slope of the mountain. That will make it look more believable. I'm going to go all the way up the seam of the paper here. And so right now I'm actually at a point where I kind of want my brush to be dry, so that's when I kind of wipe it on the edge of my palette to get some of the moisture off. So then that way I can go up here and start bringing this down, and it won't be as thick. Just like that. And the drier it gets, the more you can kind of spread it out a little bit to get those undertones like we did over on the other side. So now I'm going to take a little bit of my brown, which I actually grabbed the wrong color here, take a little bit of my brown and mix it in with my green, because I want to have a dark kind of forest green to go over these mountains again. And then I am going to follow this edge and I'm going to go up into the black here. And I am doing that on purpose. Oh, that's like the perfect position for this light. so that it doesn't just look like flat black, because black can make your painting look very unrealistic and flat. So you want to have a lot of layers if you can. And then I'm going to go back up to this line and I'm going to kind of rough it up a little bit, because you don't want it to be super smooth because it's trees at the top of this mountain that you're seeing. So you want there to be different peaks on it. Just like that. All right, we're going to do a similar thing on the other side, but I want it to be even more brown than green. And depending on how advanced a painter you are, you can definitely keep going, add more little details as you go. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Honestly, when I'm making paintings, there are usually many different times that I could stop and it would be a recognizable painting, but because I have several years of experience, I will add in more details as I go, and that is something that I learned over time. So and a lot of the paintings that I'm showing you, I'm not going into super intense detail because I want you guys to be able to go in and add what you're comfortable with. All right, so we have our basic landscape, but the one thing that we're going to want to make sure that we do here is we want to make sure that we show that this is water. And one of the easiest ways to do that is just to take the color that's already there and we're going to spread it out. But we're going to do it on that same horizon line. You don't want to do any lines going back and forth this way, because then it'll just look like it's completely scrambled. Water, when you look at it, ripples along that horizon line. So what we're going to do is we're going to wet down our brush, and it works easiest if you have a flat brush, because then you can just go back and forth on a line like this. But if you have a pointed brush, that works too. And I'm just going to go back and forth like this. And I'm just letting the water take bits of that color and move it around. It doesn't have to be all of it. In fact, it's better if it's not, because you don't want it to be blurred. You still want to be able to see what it was that you painted. So can you see the back and forth lines here? Now, to highlight that, what we're going to do is we're going to add spots where the light is reflecting off of the water. So we're going to take some white, or you can take a very light blue, and we're just going to do some spots right over the top. And it'll catch some of the colors, and that's fine, but what you want is you want there to be spots where it is drastically lighter, especially down here, because remember, that's why we didn't put a lot of color down there, is because it was catching the light and turning mostly white. So we'll put a lot of white down there. And this is why it doesn't make a lot of difference if you don't have your reflection looking exactly like the top, because you're going to distort it anyway. All right, then I'm actually going to take some black and do the same thing over on the edges here, because it is so much darker over here. But I'm only just grabbing, putting it on the edge and pulling it out so that it looks like little spikes of dark coming out there. You definitely want some to be longer than others. You don't want it to be uniform. Almost nothing in nature is going to be perfectly uniform. You're not generally going to see that in most things. You're not going to see a lot of straight lines and perfect circles and stuff like that. And I'm just going to put some very light ones that kind of come out further, but I don't want a ton of them. So then you end up with something like this, which I suppose, since you guys are upside down, which is also fine. Sometimes it's actually easier to paint upside down because you're less likely to be trying to paint it the way you expect it to look, and you're going to be more likely to paint it the way it actually looks in the picture. If you're ever painting a portrait of someone or something and you are struggling to make it look correct, it's usually because your brain is kind of trying to make it look the way it expects it to look. So if you flip everything upside down, you're more likely to look at it as shapes and colors and paint those shapes and colors rather than painting what you would expect, if that makes any sense. So sometimes painting upside down is actually very, very helpful. But there we have it. And we will do more of these, and if you would like, you can also look up the episode that we did where this was not done live, if you want to be able to pause and rewind and kind of go back over it. If it doesn't turn out the way you expect it to, that's fine. These are for practice, and you can always do it again if you like. I have paintings that I've done multiple times because it wasn't turning out the way that I wanted it to. So don't be shy about that. That is totally fine. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know. And we will be doing a few different painting projects like this. We'll be doing landscapes. I have some designs for floral and portraits, and so we'll keep you posted. Have a good week.